Okay, let's get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Goldberg, and I'm moderating today's panel. I own victims' rights law firm C.A. Goldberg P. LLC, where we fight for victims of online harassment, sexual assault, and blackmail. And we love particularly to go after Section 230. Welcome to the second webinar in a four-part series being hosted by the Alliance to Counter Crime Online and the journals American Prospect and American Affairs. We have a really great panel today. I'm really excited to be moderating it. We're joined by three panelists: Catherine Dean, who is a fearless whistleblower who is taking on the world of fake online reviews. Second, we have Matthew Herrick, who is one of the only people in this country who has gone through the entire legal process from district court up through petitioning the Supreme Court of the United States and was clobbered at every turn by Section 230 and never saw justice. And finally, Jaime Puerta, who lost his 16-year-old son because of fentanyl being trafficked on Snapchat, and who's tirelessly fighting for justice and safety on our most used social media platforms. We're going to begin with a 3-minute clip from Congressman Gus Bilirakis from Florida, who's going to welcome you again.
Good afternoon. I'm Congressman Gus Bilirakis, and I have the pleasure of serving as ranking member of the Consumer Protection and Commerce Subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Thank you for inviting me to provide remarks ahead of this important panel discussion. My role in bringing about internet platform responsibility is simple. We want to see transparency and accountability. Our subcommittee also has jurisdiction over consumer privacy. So how these platforms collect, share, and act on our data and moderate our content is a fundamental issue in this debate. This platform responsibility means questioning what the platform is doing, how their executives are making their decisions, and what recourse our regular everyday consumers have when they have been mistreated or worse, victimized. It means protecting our kids from predators, ensuring that seniors don't get scammed out of their life savings, and figuring out how small businesses can survive and not get pushed out of the marketplace for being good stewards of their online stores. None of these I have listed are hypotheticals. We hear about this every day. All have happened and are continuing to happen. For these reasons, I put the big tech CEOs on notice in March. Through our hearings, letters, and big tech accountability platform, we are going to right the ship, I promise you. In fact, when Mr. Zuckerberg testified in front of our committee for the first time in 2018, my line of questioning centered around the continued online sale of opioids on Facebook. It was unacceptable then, and it's unacceptable now. Lives are in the balance. My time in Congress has provided me enough knowledge about the history of our committee to know what the Telecommunications Act was, and importantly, what it wasn't. I was pleased to hear that you are analyzing this, and specifically Section 230 with this panel series. Components of that law have been struck down by the courts, as you know, while other provisions are interpreted and applied differently than first conceived. This is all a departure from congressional intent. Instead of hiding behind Section 230 court dismissals, they instead must they actually need to focus on cooperating with us and law enforcement to protect our citizens. I look forward to working with all of you as we empower the Federal Trade Commission to dig into these problems. Thank you again for your invitation to speak. It is a real honor to be with you.
So this webinar series examines flaws in how courts have interpreted Section 230, and we consider suggestions for fixing this 26-word protection, or 26-word provision, rather. It's only a protection for our tech companies, the most powerful companies in the history of the universe. The following panels after this one will feature discussions with policy and technology experts, but today we are hearing compelling testimonies from 3 individuals who've been personally impacted by platforms' failure to curb unlawful activity on their services. We'll first hear from each of the speakers, and then at the end we'll have question and answers. And you can send messages to us via chat if you're on Zoom, or if you're watching live or via live stream, then you can tweet questions to us at the Twitter account @counteringcrime. And I will receive those questions as well. So Section 230 was intended as a sword and a shield that would allow tech companies to moderate harmful and illegal content without fear of liability. Unfortunately, courts have just so extravagantly interpreted what this statute means that it's had the very opposite effect. Rather than helping users online, it has only protected our internet companies and basically made them into the behemoths that they are and created an inconceivably huge power imbalance between individuals and the platforms themselves. These companies have absolutely no legal pressure to moderate the content that's on their platform at all, because they have no fear of being sued, because courts, again, have interpreted Section 230 so favorably to the platforms. And ordinarily, brick-and-mortar businesses can be held liable, responsible, if they engage in unlawful or irresponsible actions, or if one of their products injures people. But time and time again, we've seen courts give a free pass to the tech industry, which none of us have the luxury of being able to avoid in our day-to-day life. Section 230 has effectively blocked a path to justice for people and businesses harmed online. And we're going to hear more about that today with the 3 extraordinary people that are part of this panel. Our first speaker is Catherine Dean. She is a former federal criminal investigator who realized that she'd been duped by a fake online review when she was choosing a medical practitioner. And she set out to investigate the problem, single-handedly uncovering a shadow industry for fake online reviews that's impacted thousands of small businesses, including lawyers, home contractors, and medical practices. I mean, it sounds like the beginning of a really, really interesting television show, but Catherine is the real deal. A special focus of her research, which the FTC Commissioner Rohit Chopra has called a great service to the public, has been on the role and the culpability of the big tech companies in facilitating and concealing this fraud. Catherine is creator of Fake Review Watch on YouTube, and her research has formed the basis of investigative stories in the Washington Post, National Public Radio's Reveal program, and on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's evening news program. So Catherine, we want to hear all about the incredible work that you're doing. And you're on mute.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. When I began researching online review fraud, I had initially intended to present cases of businesses faking reviews to review platforms such as Google and Yelp so they could take action. Quickly, however, I realized that the review platforms either knew or should have known what was happening. They just didn't seriously care. So the primary purpose of Fake Review Watch is to show the tech companies' culpability in foisting this fraud on the American people. Online review fraud is so pervasive and has such broad reach that the overall harm it causes, in my opinion, is as great as that caused by any other form of internet-based fraud. I'm also a victim of review fraud. 4 years ago, I was struggling with depression. and I looked online for psychiatrists in my area. I noticed one practice had lots of great Yelp reviews, so I decided to give them a try. I was not impressed, and I chose not to return, and I wrote a measured but negative Yelp review about my experience. 6 weeks later, I received a letter from an attorney threatening me with legal action over my Yelp review. I was stunned and scared, but my review was accurate and fair, and I refused to take it down. The psychiatric practice continued to harass me, calling me and pressuring me to remove my review. This outrageous conduct by a psychiatric practice that was well reviewed on Yelp actually added anxiety and insomnia to my mental health concerns. But their behavior also made me question the legitimacy of their positive reviews. Drawing on my experience as a former federal investigator, I began digging, and what I found online was shocking. Scores of Facebook groups exist for the sole purpose of arranging fake online reviews for businesses. Some groups include thousands of members and have obvious names, such as the Review Exchange or Yelp Google Review Help in US. People who want reviews post ads, such as, "Hi, looking for Google Swap. I can do Yelp, Google, Facebook, or Trustpilot." Or simply, "I need Google reviews in bulk." As I continued digging, I found someone in these Facebook groups arranging trades of fake Yelp and Google reviews on behalf of the psychiatric practice I'd gone to. These review trades were with a dermatologist in Los Angeles, a tattoo artist in Santa Cruz, and a credit counseling service in Texas, among others. As I expanded my investigation, I discovered people trading reviews from every profession you can imagine: doctors, dentists, lawyers, career consultants, contractors, barbers, kids' party rental businesses, you name it. I also found review selling services. These review sellers post comments in the Facebook groups, such as, "Who needs strong Yelp reviews? I have 80 elite friends in California and 500 real Yelpers ready." Or, "Let me know if anyone is interested to buy Google reviews in bulk." I found an online marketer who pays college students to post fake Yelp reviews for his business clients. I discovered a Bangladeshi review broker who hired his clients on Facebook to post Google and Trustpilot reviews for American medical practices. Keep in mind that this is more than just posting a 5-star review. These reviewers post fake testimonials, often written by the businesses themselves, intended to deceive customers. By plotting the profiles of Yelp or Google reviewers and the businesses they've reviewed on spreadsheets, I've also uncovered businesses from across North America in fake review networks. For example, I plotted 46 Google reviewers of a Manhattan dental practice on a spreadsheet and found 20 of them had reviewed the same plumber in upstate New York. 13 had reviewed the same Toronto pizzeria. And 13 of these supposed Manhattan dental patients had also reviewed the same Michigan dental practice. Oh, and 11 had reviewed the same California hearing care center, and 8 had reviewed the same Florida pediatrician. This is simply not believable. If I can find this fraud by perusing Facebook and using simple spreadsheets, certainly tech companies like Facebook, Google, and Yelp can. But as of now, they have no incentive to clean up the fraud. They profit from advertising dollars and traffic on their sites, whether the reviews are real or fake. And when they do take limited action, and that's often only when prodded, they usually do not inform consumers about it. The reason for all of this faking is that millions of us use online consumer reviews. A 2018 Pew study found that 93% of US adults use online reviews and ratings when buying something for the first time, and that 88% said that online reviews and ratings made them feel confident about their purchasing decisions. Businesses understand this, and many resort to faking reviews to manicure their online reputations. Others simply want to edge out the competition. But this faking costs us all. FTC Commissioner Rohit Chopra has voiced his concern. Quote, "Fake reviews distort our markets by rewarding bad actors and harming honest companies. The problem is growing, and the Federal Trade Commission should attack it, unquote. Unfortunately, neither the FTC nor anyone else is attacking the problem. Fraudulent consumer reviews are even more dangerous and deceptive than traditional false advertising because most of us assume they come from legitimate, unbiased customers based on real experiences. I spoke with a woman from California who told me that online reviews played an important role in helping her and her husband select a surgeon. Here's what she wrote in a Yelp review. He gave us the impression that this hernia surgery was nothing but ordinary, as he had done so many. Little did we know that for someone with so much experience, he would slip up in surgery, and my husband would lose his life that same evening. Really? From hernia surgery? The autopsy confirmed this doctor's mistake, yet ultimately he had to take no responsibility for his actions. To make matters worse, weeks later, his staff called several times to make sure my husband would be making his follow-up appointment. According to my research, this same surgeon has been accumulating fake Yelp, Google, Facebook, and Vitals reviews for years. So this woman and her husband selected a surgeon, at least in part, based on fake reviews. Now, the husband is dead. The whole online review world is the Wild West, and neither the tech companies nor government regulators have stepped up to ensure fairness or justice. Until legislation changes to hold the tech companies accountable, the system will continue to reward cheating, erode business ethics, and harm American consumers. The examples of review fraud that I've cited in this presentation are all documented on my YouTube channel, Fake Review Watch. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Catherine. You know, before hearing from you, all my exposure to online reviews were harassing ones, people making fake reviews to injure somebody else's business or retaliating against an ex by making all these fake reviews to hurt them, or trolls organizing to all negatively review somebody's book. So, you know, your research into the underbelly of fake positive reviews has been really interesting. And I mean, tying it into Section 230 as well, I mean, the problem that we're facing is that, you know, if you try to sue Yelp for having a fake review or a defamatory review, they say that they're not liable for Section 230. But then if you sue the actual reviewer and get a court order saying that it's defamatory, Yelp will say they don't have to enforce it and remove the content because they weren't named in the lawsuit, which again, they're saying they can't be named in the lawsuit because of Section 230. They're saying there's no due process. So anyways, you're doing God's work. Our second speaker, I'm so excited for everyone to hear from. He's got a lot of really important stuff to tell you about, is Matthew Herrick. Matthew is near and dear to me. He was involved in a highly publicized civil lawsuit and a criminal trial. He found himself on the front lines working to get the attention of the court and our lawmakers to re-examine Section 230 through the product liability claims introduced in his civil lawsuit against Grindr. I was his lawyer, full disclosure. But this, he's one of the only living people who has actually gone all the way through Section 230 and been spit out by our court system and told that he has no legal right to be there. But, you know, this has begun his really momentous journey advocating for change and reform, both civilly and criminally, centering on domestic abuse, stalking, and impersonation, both online and off. So Matthew, please tell everybody everything they need to know.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. As Carrie said, she was my lawyer. We were involved in a very public lawsuit against Grindr. Just a quick background on everything. Back in 2016, 2017, my ex began stalking and impersonating me on multiple platforms, specifically Grindr. And he was creating profiles that were presented to be like physically me, while soliciting sex on my behalf, drugs, There was a lot of racial violence that was going on. Other platforms were able to pull these profiles and ban the user, which meant that they could no longer sign up for the dating app using the phone that they currently had. Grindr, on the other hand, I had submitted over 50 complaints to them and just received automated responses back. This in turn started to lead into a criminal investigation with the district attorney's office. The district attorney had subpoenaed Grindr multiple times and they didn't respond to them. This inevitably led me to Carrie's office, and Carrie wanted to take on my case to represent me against Grindr. We initially walked into this lawsuit with not the hopes of having any sort of monetary gain, but to have Grindr actually acknowledge that I existed and to pull the impersonating profiles and to ban the user and to hand over the evidence so that we could actually stop this individual from terrorizing my life. We sent a cease and desist letter. Grindr ignored that. We threatened a lawsuit. They ignored that. We got an emergency injunction from the Supreme Court demanding that they remove the profiles, ban the user, and hand over the evidence. Grindr ignored that. This led to us appearing in district court. Grindr finally showed up for that appearance, but when they showed up, they said, we have no legal responsibility within any of this. We are shielded by Section 230, so it gives us complete immunity. So we don't actually have to help this guy. At that point in my life, I had no idea what Section 230 was. So I was completely dumbfounded by what was being said. I didn't understand that this company knew what was going on their platform, but knowingly and willingly just ignored it and told a court that they didn't care. My life didn't matter is what they were saying. They said, that's horrible, but not our problem. So we took our lawsuit to the district court, and unfortunately, it was dismissed on the grounds of Section 230. We had massive amounts of evidence and factual information that was being prepared to be presented to the court, but the court denied us even the capability to present it in any sort of fashion. That's how powerful Section 230 was. So inevitably, we went through this entire justice system, which at every single point continued to fail me. We went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. They inevitably said the same thing. Section 230 is too strong. I remember when we were sitting in the court, one of the judges that was standing on the Second Circuit said, this is morally and ethically horrible of this company. And I thought to myself, don't moral and ethics build laws? Aren't they what we create when we create criminal justice laws? Why are these massive corporations, these big tech companies, have no moral and ethical values that they need to abide by because they have this law that was created at the birth of the internet? We are now living in 2021. It is no longer the early 90s. Our world is so technologically driven that we have little computers in our hands that we walk around with every day. And every single day, this need for and dependency on technology continues to grow and expand. And we have these outdated laws in our civil system that require no legal responsibility on their behalf, which is just going to turn into a larger scale problem as we grow and expand. So Carrie and I moved on to the Supreme Court and petitioned the Supreme Court. They inevitably denied me as well, stating that Section 230, they couldn't hold Grindr accountable under Section 230 because they were not considered the publisher. They were just a platform that was hosting it. Through my experience, I've had so much opportunity to speak with so many different individuals. I've gotten hundreds upon hundreds of emails of people suffering similar situations to what I suffered, some worse, some a little bit less. Regardless, they have nowhere to turn. And they ask me for advice. And only advice I can give them is to survive by I mean, I don't even know how to respond to that. I'm like dumbfounded right now when I'm speaking because I read all of this stuff and I don't know what to say to anybody. They say that they contacted the company does not responding, that there's physical violence, and I don't have the suggestions to them because I know the truth because I was denied the entire time. I think that what I'm getting at is Section 230 needs to be reformed. We need to change it. And I'm not exactly sure what that answer is. I have a lot of suggestions, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are drafting legislation and that are trying to push through different clauses and different methods of reforming Section 230. But at the end of the day, if we don't re-examine Section 230, then our people are going to continue to get hurt, for people are going to die, and these companies will have no legal liability, so it'll just exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And not only are we at risk of people dying, people have died. And you're going to hear from Jaime Puerta really soon. I just want to kind of highlight a couple points that Matthew made to all of our viewers that we're so happy you're here. A lot of people say that, hey, if you change Section 230, there's just going to be all these frivolous litigations that are just flocking to the courts. I want you to look at the three people on this panel and recognize that they all are here telling you about very, very legitimate problems with the internet. Matthew Herrick was not responding to something that had happened to him, months or years ago, like most litigations. They're usually after the fact. Matthew was receiving as many as 23 people a day. On one day, he got 4 people in 6 minutes who came to his home and to his job thinking that they were going to have sex with him, who his ex was sending through Grindr's geolocating technology, which pinpoints where a person is. Okay, he was trying to get help. He'd gone to the police 10 times. He had an order of protection against his abuser, and none of it was helping. And so the only entity that was in the exclusive position of helping was Grindr, that could actually ban the accounts that were being used to send stalkers to Matthew. And you're going to hear now from Jaime Puerta, who, well, let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's a Marine Corps veteran and a small business owner who lives in Santa Clarita, California. Jaime lost his 16-year-old son, Daniel, his only child, when Daniel ingested what he thought was a blue 30 milligram oxycodone pill that he purchased from a dealer on Snapchat. Jaime found out weeks later that his son had ingested illicit fentanyl, and that's what took his life. Since Daniel's death, Jaime has worked tirelessly in bringing awareness to this existential threat to children and advocating for more common sense laws concerning fentanyl trafficking and for social media platforms to be held liable for hosting drug traffickers. He recently founded VOID, which stands for Victims of Illicit Drugs, along with 3 other bereaved parents, and serves as its president. Daniel would have graduated this month from high school. Instead, you're hearing his story from his father, Jaime. Jaime, please tell everybody about the battle that you're taking on.
Good afternoon. My name is Jaime Puerta, and I am the president of VOID, Victims of Illicit Drugs. We are a California-based nonprofit founded by myself and 3 other parents who have lost their children due to fentanyl poisoning. Social media has become a common method in which counterfeit pills and other substances are purchased. And of the prevalent social media platforms, Snapchat is one of, if not the most popular use for this purpose. Our movement was formed to bring to the public's attention through education, awareness, and legislative advocacy, the immediate danger of sudden death associated with the use of illicit narcotics, illicit fentanyl, and other emerging synthetic analogs, as well as the prevalent and seemingly unabated dangers of social media in accommodating these illegal purchases. We speak on behalf of our loved ones and hundreds of thousands from across our nation who are no longer able to do so due to their untimely passing due to fentanyl poisoning. One of those who are no longer able to speak for themselves is my 16-year-old son, Daniel Joseph Huerta Johnson, who was diagnosed with severe depression and ADHD in January of 2020. Daniel was not a habitual drug user by any sense of the word, nor had he been diagnosed with substance use disorder. Like many, he would self-medicate from time to time to relieve his symptoms of depression. On April 2nd, 2020, I walked into my son's room to find his lifeless body in his bed. In a state of shock and panic, I called 911 first, then his mother. Emergency services had arrived at our home and immediately began CPR. He was transported to our local hospital in Santa Clarita, California, stabilized, and then transferred to Los Angeles Children's Hospital. A team of specialty doctors did everything they could to bring our son back, but unfortunately, there was nothing they could do. My son had suffered multiple organ failure and cardiopulmonary arrest. His state of being had become much worse from the day that he had been admitted. All they could do was to keep him comfortable until his biological mother, Denise Johnson, and I made the decision to discontinue all life support efforts. On April 6th at 3:45 p.m., all life support was discontinued. His mother, Denise, was lying next to him in his hospital bed, gently stroking his beautiful head of sandy brown hair, and I was holding his hand when he drew his last breath at exactly 5:08 p.m. My only son passed away in peace, surrounded by his grandmother, Mary, his Aunt Diane, his mother, Denise, and I. I kissed his forehead like I did on most nights when saying goodnight and left the hospital to go home. Approximately 2 to 3 weeks after my son's passing, I was contacted by a detective from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office. I was told that my son had died due to an overdose, half of a blue pill, which I later came to find out looked exactly like a pharmaceutical grade 30 milligram oxycodone pill, had been found on his dresser. It was sent to their laboratory for analysis. It was found that the pill that had taken my son's life was pure illicit fentanyl. The first question I had to ask myself was, how does one die of an overdose when you have only consumed half of a pill? How does anyone die from only half a pill? Is it even possible to die from taking half an oxycodone pill? There is no such thing as a pharmaceutical pill that can take someone's life. My son had consumed what he thought was a blue 30 milligram oxycodone. In reality, he had unknowingly ingested an illicit counterfeit opioid made of nothing but a base filler or binding agent and fentanyl. This was made deceptively to look exactly like a pharmaceutical grade oxycodone pill, and it killed him. My son's death was not an overdose. An overdose is when you take more than the normal or recommended amount of something, often a drug, and that is simply not the case in most of these cases. My son died of acute fentanyl poisoning. In being poisoned, he did not overdose, he was murdered. Once the authorities had come to the same conclusion, an investigation into his death was begun to find out who had furnished him with the lethal pill. The investigation continues to this day, 14 months after the fact. As an analogy, my good friend Michael Gray from the Access Foundation puts it in perspective. In 1982, 7 people in the city of Chicago went to their local stores, bought extra strength Tylenol, and all 7 of those people died. Did they die because they took too much extra strength Tylenol? Or did they die because they had truly consumed what was extra strength Tylenol tainted with potassium cyanide? Ladies and gentlemen, there is no difference in someone adding cyanide to a product or someone making a product that is supposed to be one thing, but is nothing but a poison counterfeit containing illicit fentanyl. When criminal organizations south of the border and here in the United States create and manufacture a pill that mimics a legitimate pharmaceutical or adds fentanyl to other illicit drugs like cocaine and methamphetamine, this is not an overdose. It is a poisoning. These victims are intentionally being deceived and killed. Had my son made the same decision to self-medicate in 2012, or even 3 years ago, he would be alive today. Prior to what we refer to as a paradigm shift in the illicit narcotic world in 2013, low-level drug dealers, for the most part, were not responsible for selling instant death with traditionally non-lethal drugs. In most cases, prior to 2013, drug-related deaths were due to massive quantities of traditional drugs being consumed. a combination of drugs being consumed in a very short time frame by the user, or other mitigating factors well outside the role of the drug dealer. But in 2013, things changed when massive amounts of illicit fentanyl began to be introduced into the black markets in the United States. It spread rapidly outside the confines of the addiction community. In doing so, it began to take the lives of everyday teenagers who were self-medicating like my son Daniel in rapidly increasing numbers. Illicit fentanyl has done what no other black market can do. It can kill with a single use in microscopic amounts. All that is needed is just 2 to 3 milligrams of this poison to take someone's life. Just one counterfeit opioid can kill. Unfortunately, my son Daniel has not been the only one died due to the scourge. His death is but a drop in the ocean compared to all who have lost their lives in this country due to acute fentanyl poisoning. And what has truly fueled this epidemic of drug death through its illegal distribution has been social media platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, or Facebook, who actively allow low-level drug dealers to sell their poison to unsuspecting victims with absolute impunity due to protections afforded to them under Section 230C. Snapchat, in my humble opinion, has been the #1 driving force for the fastest growing and least recognized demographic for drug-related deaths, not only in Southern California, but the rest of the nation. Average everyday people and children like my 16-year-old son, Daniel, who was supposed to graduate from high school this year and was learning how to code, curious first-time using teenagers such as 14-year-old Alexander Neville, who was an avid skateboarder and Boy Scout from Aliso Viejo, California. Arizona State University straight A student Alexandra Capilotto, 20 years old from Temecula, California. 17-year-old Zachary Didier, a self-taught pianist, track and field star, and straight A student who had been accepted to UCLA and 4 other University of California schools from Rockland, California. Dylan Kaiserantos, who will be forever 18 years old, and so many, many more. These and thousands of other victims of illicit poisonings began dying in record numbers due to the easy access that they have with their smartphones. All that is needed is a Snap account, type in a few key emojis or words, and minutes later, have a drug dealer deliver the fatal counterfeit pill to your child at what is supposed to be the safest place on earth, their home. Statistics state that 3 out of 4 children who pass away due to acute fentanyl poisoning are found by their parents in the early morning hours in their bedrooms, like I had. The number of fentanyl deaths to date are, for a lack of better words, alarming but not surprising. Social media platforms have failed in bringing common sense and urgent solutions in ridding their platforms of unscrupulous actors preying on our children, but also community and religious leaders, teachers, and state and federal legislators who haven't taken the time or effort in recognizing the true nature of this epidemic and who absolutely refuse to address the problem with vigor and honesty. Unfortunately, due to irresponsible social media platforms like Snapchat, and the inaction of our legislators in protecting our children, thousands upon thousands of more unsuspecting children in the United States will continue to be killed, and many of their parents will never see justice for their dead children. And what makes this scenario even more horrifying than what it is, drug dealers who use apps like Snap, Facebook, Instagram, or the countless other platforms to sell their poison know that they can continue with their nefarious acts with complete impunity, so long as these platforms continue to be shielded from any punitive action by claiming Section 230 protection. In a conversation earlier this last month with 3 of Snap's top executives, their contention was that they are incapable of stopping these types of illegal activities on their platform, knowing full well that these activities are leading to the death of thousands upon thousands of unsuspecting children. The horrific loss of our children, coupled with the anguish in knowing that there will be more parents like myself joining our ranks, absolutely sickens me to my core. That is why I respectfully ask that we come together as one and please help save our children. I know you can't bring back my son Daniel or the 92,000 plus who died last year to drug death, but you just might be able to save many, many others if you make the necessary changes to our current outdated laws. From a historical perspective, I can only look to the following legislation that appears to be the first step moving forward in addressing the current problem. Public Law 115-164 states in part, Section 1 short title, This act may be cited as the Allow States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act of 2017. This law targeted online sex trafficking that platforms were permitting to occur, much like platforms in the current day permit, virtually unabated, the online distribution and trafficking of dangerous drugs such as fentanyl. By no stretch of the imagination can I interpret the congressional intent in enacting 47 USC Section 230 in 1996 would be to shield from liability website platforms from third-party content that involves criminal conduct. Simply, we all understood the nature of the internet at that time was such that we never could have envisioned the potential of such despicable activities as sex trafficking and the distribution of dangerous, deadly drugs occurring. Add to the equation the owners of these platforms, such as Snapchat, acknowledge that these activities are occurring under their nose, but they are incapable of stopping it. If they are incapable of providing reasonable protections to the public from serious injury or death, then they should not be permitted to operate. Public Law 115-164 was extremely effective in abating the sex trafficking occurring on Backpage and other online platforms. Could the same theory be applied in enacting of a similar law to provide our citizens protection from the despicable and deceptive distributions and sales of illicit drugs online? I think it's long past due for it to be considered. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jaime. You know, we heard both Jaime and Matthew talk about how in both their cases, the platforms said that they were incapable of stopping abuse. And that's just unfathomable as a business, that you'd start a business that would then say that they're incapable of making a safe business. We don't see that in any other realm outside the internet. But let's talk about product liability for a second. Matthew, you and I brought the product liability theory forward, and it was the first time it had been applied to a tech product in the Second Circuit. And recently, in an opinion, Justice Clarence Thomas, of all people, cited to your case, Herrick v. Grinder, and said he's ready for a Section 230 case because, obviously legislators aren't taking any action to rein it in. And so, are we at the hands of the Supreme Court to do it? And of course, we're all wondering what way would they go? Certainly, legislation seems a little bit more controllable in some respects. But we also saw the huge victory recently in the Lemon v. Snap case over in the Ninth Circuit, which applied the Herrick product liability standard and was successful in the case involving Snap's speed filter, which was used and contributed to the death of 3 kids. Now, Jaime, let's begin with you. Can you tell us a little bit about how the product design features helped facilitate the drug dealers who sold Daniel the fentanyl?
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question. Well, first and foremost, you have to look at Snap's business model. If you look at their logo, it's a ghost. What does a ghost do? A ghost disappears. When you have content that is being posted and 20 minutes later is disappearing, it's because they don't want people to look at what they are posting. As long as your child has a public profile on Snap, anybody can reach out to them. Anybody can. Or if your child is self-medicating or is in that experimental stage of wanting to take drugs, they have a smartphone. All they have to do, go on Snap, put in #perk or #oxycodone or #Xanax, and you will have a drug dealer reaching out to them with a menu, and we have pictures, a menu of drugs in which they can choose from and deliver to the front door of your home. Unfortunately, as we all know, or now I know, is that all of these illicit counterfeit opioids that are being sold to Snap are counterfeits made south of the border, and they're made with fentanyl. And according to Mr. William Bodner, of Los Angeles County DEA office, a third of all these pills are lethal. And that is most of the case in the rest of the nation as well. So what we have is social media platforms where unscrupulous actors, drug dealers are reaching out to our children, or our children are reaching out to them, asking for what they think is a pharmaceutical grade opioid, and in fact is a counterfeit opioid, and it's killing them. I would like to make very clear as well, my son made a bad decision, but my son was 16 years old. What 16-year-old boy doesn't make a bad decision? I can tell you right now, I made many bad decisions in my life, and I made them when I was a child as well. But what I can tell you, and respectfully, is that my son did not deserve to die for one bad decision. I will never see my son graduate from high school like all of his partners did very recently. I will never see my son go to college. I will never see my son get married, and I will never, ever be a grandfather. And like I had said before, I am just a drop in the ocean compared to the thousands upon thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of parents that are going through the same thing that I am. And it's impossible. I have brought this up with various and countless attorneys of coming after Snapchat's platform, and they all claim that they cannot do anything about it due to Section 230C. What recourse do we have? Do we continue letting drug dealers selling drugs or illicit opioids to our children and continue watching them die? How is that even possible in the United States of America, the greatest nation on earth? Why is it that we are allowing this to happen? Section 230C has to be revised. It is a platform which is rift of bad behavior, unscrupulous actors, not only drug trafficking, but sex trafficking, prostitution, and the list goes on and on and on.
Thank you so much. And I just want to also just, again, thank our panelists for being here and just being so generous with the stories that you're telling us, really painful stories. We've got a few more minutes. I want to quickly hear from Matthew Herrick, and then I've got a final question for Catherine. But when we talk about product design, I'm pretty sure that Jaime was telling us that when somebody, like a drug dealer, closes their Snapchat account, it deletes the conversation between both the recipient and the sender. And that's common also in dating apps, and it's one of the problems that we at my firm see when somebody's trying to get evidence of after being sexually assaulted through a dating app. Suddenly the offender, unlike in Matthew's case, just poof disappears and takes all the evidence, often an apology or an admission with them, and the app doesn't provide it. Matthew, what sort of product design features facilitated the stalking that you experienced?
So the Grinder is based on like a geolocation system. So it's created a grid that goes from the closest person to you to the farthest person from you. And that's how it appears. They basically, the gentleman that was stalking me and impersonating me used the app with my photo, but then used an app to infiltrate their system and spoof his location. So he appeared to be at my physical address of my home or my physical address of my job. And then he would direct, all these people to my home under the impression that they were coming to meet me.
Yeah, so it's like the very inherent features of the problem of the products are what are causing the harm, and these tech companies are saying that they're completely abdicating responsibility. Catherine, I have a question for you. You mentioned that when tech companies do take action against fake reviews, they only do it when they're prodded and they don't even then tell the consumer about it. Can you expand a little bit more on that? And you're muted. There you go.
Sure. So even with my own case in the psychiatric practice, I had established that the practice clearly had lots of fake reviews and that Yelp could see it based on the review patterns of these reviewers. And Yelp only addressed the problem after the Center for Investigative Reporting got involved and started asking them questions. And you know, Yelp has a lot more information than they give consumers about the multitude of businesses faking reviews on their platform. And regarding Google, for example, I uncovered a network of over 1,200 businesses receiving fake Google reviews. And Google began taking down those profiles only after the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation did a national story on it. And I followed that up with an op-ed in the Toronto Star calling out Google. And by the way, they didn't even warn consumers about any of these businesses. They just take the profiles down and you would have no idea as a consumer that Google might have removed 100 of the businesses that you're considering of their reviews. Many of them doctors, dentists, mental health practitioners. So it's essentially useless. So that's what I mean by being prodded. When they're prodded by the media, they take action, limited. Usually it's a reactive, minimalist approach.
Yeah, thank you. One of our attendees makes a really good point, which is that there's just so much Section 230 propaganda out there. And, there's just this generation of people who think the internet is this place where no wrongdoing can happen. And they're obviously not the people that have, at least to their knowledge, experienced a harm that they think is important, and they don't have empathy toward people who do. But there's this idea that we can't regulate the internet, that it's this like safe haven, that it's completely different from the rest of the world. And that's just completely outdated, because I mean, you've all heard it, everyone who's here, who's on this panel, that there's no offline anymore. We don't have that luxury. And this isn't an online harm. These are real harms. You read a fake review, you go to a bad doctor, and you could die. Or with Matthew Herrick, you have people coming in real life to your home, thinking that they're gonna have sex with you, worrying about whether you're going to be sexually assaulted that day because they follow you into the bathroom at work. This is not a cyber stalking problem. These are not cyber crimes. You have Jaime's son who died because of a pill he bought on Snapchat. We need to just relinquish this idea that this is internet stuff, and that we should have separate sets of laws for internet stuff versus real life stuff. Do any of you amazing panelists have any just like parting words that you want to say before I wrap things up? I have a few words that I want to tell everybody about regarding the next panel on Thursday.
Yes, I'd like to address a question that I'm seeing here by Shawnee Lazor. We state, sorry for your loss, yet need to say that the drug war is a major problem which absolutely exacerbates human trafficking, etc. And he states that he's a holistic doctor and knows so much more, and he knows what he's talking about. Let's talk about that thing about the war on drugs. First and foremost, fentanyl changes everything. There's no amount of harm reduction, needle exchange, Narcan, or anything else that is going to save the life of an unsuspecting child who goes onto the Snapchat platform and orders from a drug dealer a counterfeit opioid. That child doesn't even have the chance of becoming addicted to drugs, because one pill will kill that child, period. And when you're talking about human trafficking, I can tell you right now, I am Colombian American. I am Latino. And I have grown up here and I've been brought up in the United States, but I can tell you right now that the majority of all Latin Americans do not want to come to the United States. They want to stay home. They want to be home, but they are being forced by these Mexican cartels off of their lands, and they have nowhere else to go but to the most freest and best nation in the world, which is the United States of America. That is my humble opinion. They would rather stay home than having to be trafficked over here. So when it comes to the war on drugs, again, fentanyl changes absolutely everything. There is no second chances with that. That's all I'd like to say on that.
Thank you. Matthew and Catherine, do you have any parting words for our audience?
I think I want to just address, when I was talking earlier, I wanted to address the fact that Carrie and myself had introduced our product liability claims in our lawsuit, stating that basically if you create this product that you can't control, or you don't have the technologies in place to keep people safe, then you have created a defective product, and that product should be taken off the market. And it's the same as goes for the real life stuff that we use in our everyday lives, like motors and tires and things of that nature. And I think that what was unfortunate in my particular case is Grindr stated that they had no capability of removing the profiles because they didn't have the technologies, and they're like one of the #1 leading apps in the entire world. I mean, it's everywhere. And they said it was too expensive. In my opinion, I think that if technology to keep your users safe, that keep your business alive, that make you a multi-billion dollar corporation, and you say you can't afford to put them in place, and you shouldn't exist. And they say that these smaller companies won't be able to exist. Maybe we're doing a favor to society by automatically taking them off the market because they don't have the ability to police their platform in any kind of way. They don't have the ability to keep their people safe. So in the end of all of this, I think that's where Section 230 comes in, because if they had put in all of the effort and time to actually help me, my suffering would have been very minimal. I'm not naive. I know that this stalker would have continued on his war path, but at least it would have lessened my pain and also gave us the capability to put this man in prison quicker.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kay. You're muted.
Clearly, there needs to be a change in legislation. Until these tech companies have some skin in the game, they're not going to be too serious about cleaning any of this up. But we also need law enforcement to start stepping in and prosecuting people for these crimes and fraud. So we need both.
Yeah. Couldn't say it better. Okay, everyone who's here, thank you so much for being with us for this hour. I really hope that you'll join back on Thursday at 3 p.m. for the next panel. It's with Julius Krein, who's the editor of American Affairs. And Julius will be hosting 3 speakers: Gretchen Peters from the Alliance to Counter Crime Online, Dr. Tim Mackey from the University of California, San Diego, and Tom Galvin from Digital Citizens Alliance. And they'll be discussing existing technologies and coding practices that could restrict or remove a wide range of illicit content. And they'll analyze how addressing this problem is a policy question and not a technical one. So it's a good segue from our program to theirs. Then please tune in for the final panel, which is on Tuesday, June 29th, also at 3 p.m., where panelists will discuss proposals to revise Section 230 to give people harmed by product failure or platform negligence a path to justice. So I want to thank everyone who's in the audience and our amazing panelists and the Alliance to Counter Crime Online for being with us this Tuesday. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate the invitation.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for the opportunity. Bye.